everyone, welcome to Performacast Season 2, Episode 13. And today we have a very special guest, Nick Klingerman. Did I pronounce that right?
No, but that's fine.
Klingensmith.
Klingensmith.
Klingensmith, not man. Okay. I need to get that practice. Anyway, before we start, before we get to him, just please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button, just Aussie Montrose. There are a lot of exciting guests coming up. We've had in the past as well, and the product giveaways, and follow me on Instagram. All about core training, health, and longevity with sustainability, and it's an amazing way of looking and feeling good. And we have a very special guest of Nick, and he's a very inspirational guy, four-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic, recovering alcoholic, and has overcome obstacle courses and defied it all, which I'm very interested to hear. Welcome, Nick. How are you doing?
I am outstanding. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So, Nick, sure, it's got quite a bit of a bio there. Where should we start? Where do you want to start in your journey?
Let me, I guess I'll say this. So, yes, I'm a four-time cancer survivor. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover fatality car accidents. I have multiple areas of nerve damage. I have sleep apnea. I almost died from meningitis from COVID. A terrorist once put a nerve gas bomb threat on my airplane. That's not really relevant to the story, but it's interesting anyway. And yes, in the last 7 years, I have completed 104 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, including Boston, Chicago, New York, and Berlin, and maybe 70 other sufferfest and endurance events. But the real part of the journey wasn't the things that I went through or got through, or even through the obstacle course racing. It's everything that I learned since then and because of it. And it's really about the development of my mindset, because obstacle course racing and endurance racing was not the result. It was the vehicle that gave me the result of a change in mindset. And where now fitness is a big part of my life and a main part of my life, and something that helps me in all other areas of my life.
Wow. That's crazy stuff. Did you freeze there, or did you?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. I thought you froze.
All right, I went back.
Cool. Wow, insane. Like, not many people can pass this, the first stage of your cancer, never mind four-time cancer survivor. You have terrorist things on your thing. Like how? What got your mindset to even get through the first hurdle?
I wish I could tell you that I went into everything with this gritty, resilient mindset, but that's not the truth. The fact is the mindset that I have now, I needed to go through all those things in order to get it. So where my mind was the first time was I was mad and I was afraid. And I had built this victim mindset for myself that allowed me to, it was helpful at first. It helped me to be gritty in the mind. But what it really made me was resentful. And I was, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why does this keep happening to me? That didn't make me tough. It made me resentful, and it made me create a bubble around myself and isolate myself from other people. So my mindset sucked going through it, and the second time I got it, I was convinced I was going to die because it's the second time I got it. And again, it was why me? And I was just, why do I have to go through this? And I didn't want to let other people know that that's how I felt either. So I built this tough exterior, but that's not really who I was. The third time I got it is the most unique experience because it was a recurrence, and this time they told me it was inoperable. So I still have a tumor in my throat from over 10 years ago. That's an active tumor. But they convinced me that it was too dangerous to operate and not worth it to operate because it was not very aggressive. But what was unique about that experience is that this time I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was relieved. Because, see, that's when I was trying to quit drinking. And it gave me an excuse to drink.
Wow. So when did the car accidents, and the terrorist attack, when did this all happen? Afterwards, in between? Like,
so the the terrorist thing happened in 1995. It's not really a relevant part of my story. It is kind of unique. I had actually traveled to Greece with a group from school at the time when I was in high school. And on the way back, we were on Olympia Flight 411 flying back through JFK. And this was the same day that there was a nerve gas bomb in a Japanese subway. And somebody called in and said that they did the same thing to our flight. And whether or not I know what really happened that day or not, we were later told that it was a hoax and that there was nothing on the plane, but now that I'm an adult, I realize that may or may not have been true, but there was no incident. There was no incident. Nothing blew up. Nobody got hurt. It was a layover from hell. We were detained at JFK Airport for almost 12 hours. We were interrogated by the FBI. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning by the time we actually got out of the airport. We arrived there at like 1 in the afternoon. It was awful. But it really wasn't otherwise an exciting story. It's just something I throw in there. The first car accident, though, happened in 1999 when I was a junior in college. And it was a rollover accident. I was merging onto a highway in a Jeep Cherokee, and a 18-wheeler swerved into my lane, hit me from behind. I ricocheted off the guardrail into oncoming traffic. I regained control of the vehicle just enough to turn it away from traffic, but it got back into the median strip, which is on an angle. It was a Jeep Cherokee in 87. So it started to roll over front to back. And I was not wearing a seatbelt, and I knew it. All my seats had broken backwards on impact because it was an old car that got smashed. And so at that point, I just buried my head into my arms because I could see the ground fast approaching. And as the car flipped over front to back, I got catapulted and launched out the rear window. And I landed about 30 yards away. And
Wow.
I kind of came to. I don't think I ever really lost consciousness, but I mean, I don't know. Like, it's not like I remember flying through the air, but I was in the grass and I'm like, holy shit. And then I stood up and I was mad because I couldn't see the truck. I thought he kept going. I was a little disorientated. I didn't know what was north, what was south. And I was like, where is that motherfucker? And then people are kind of coming over to me and they're like, are you okay? Are you okay? And it was a very surreal experience. I mean, I should have been dead. When I was in the ER that day, because I had to take me down the ER anyway. So I have several herniated discs from the accident, which I knew nothing about at the time. But my arm, you can't, well, you kind of can see there's some scarring there. That would have been my forehead because I punched through the glass of the back window when I went through. So it was covered in blood. I had no idea. I thought it might have been a compound fracture. Who knows? You're in stress, you're totally in shock, but it really was just glass. And I'm sitting at the ER later, and I think everybody who worked at that hospital made a point to come look at me. And they were talking about me because I was the rollover guy. Because people don't survive they don't survive that accident. And so everybody had to get a look at me. I'm like, hey, I'm that guy. But that was one of the first times that it actually occurred to me that maybe I'm here for something else, because one of the hospital staff said that to me. I was only 19 years old. I'm in shock at the time. I didn't know anything about anything. And she was like, you're meant for something greater. And I don't know what that meant, but I remembered it. The second car accident actually didn't come till 2017. And this one was very impactful to me in terms of the direction of my life and the reason that we're here today. Because I had been obstacle course racing for 6 or 7 months at that point. I was 2 years sober. I was loving the person that I was becoming because I was developing in mind, body, and spirit. I was being intentional with my physical activity, and I was training for other races and taking control back of my life and adding discipline and commitment, consistency in different areas and health and nutrition. Everything was getting better. And that's when it hit me. Literally. I was sitting at a red light, this time in a Jeep Wrangler, and I got hit by a woman from behind who was going full speed. And I was in a lifted Jeep. So when she hit me, she actually, boom, hit me at an angle and went flying off my wheel. And it was like almost time stood still. And she flipped, boom, 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 like straight out of the fucking movies. It was ridiculous. I got out of the car and to go check on her. She was alive at the scene. She was lucid at the scene. I later found out that I had more herniated discs and more nerve damage that was undiagnosed for a long time. My Jeep was all screwed up, never rode right again. I went home that day and my cat of 12 years died, my best friend. 10 days later, the lady who hit me died. And I felt so lost. I was injured. I was emotionally broken. Even though all I was doing was sitting at a red light, I felt responsible for the woman.
Oh,
And I wanted to quit. I just didn't know what that meant. You know, you keep going to work, you keep taking showers, you keep meeting your responsibilities. And so I kept putting one foot in front of the other, but I put another race on the calendar because I got tired of waiting for a diagnosis. I just had to do something. But I was really flat. And when I was training, I just wasn't in it. You know, I just was so emotionally like detached. And I had it in my head and I was listening to a motivational speaker and they're going on and on about, you know, are you going to be a victim or are you a survivor? Are you a victim or are you a survivor? I didn't know the difference. And I realized that at that point, I had not overcome any of my adversity. I had only survived it. I had
oh,
been a victim the entire time through all four cancer diagnoses, through my diabetes, through the stories I just told you, with sleep apnea, with this and that. I allowed it to make me feel like a victim of it all the time. And so this day, though, I decided that I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I made a mental decision that I was going to be a warrior and I was going to war and that I would not be defined by my adversity, but rather my triumph over it. And so that car accident was a catalyst because everything I had gone through, I still didn't get the message that at some point I had to make a decision to no longer be a victim to my circumstances.
wow. So that's powerful, powerful stuff. I mean, choosing to be the victor rather than the victim. I mean, anyone could easily be, woe's me after all those things happening. Like, what clicked for you? You know, after the last accident, what direction did you take? What changes did you make to enable you to become not the victim?
Well, at that point, I chased everything that I was afraid of. So that's one of the reasons why not only do I do obstacle course and endurance racing, that's why I do ultra endurance racing. That's why I'm climbing a 31-mile mountain race with 20,000 feet of climbing with the highest DNF rate in the US for obstacle course racing. And I'm doing it because I want to say, fuck you, diabetes. I want to show other diabetics that they don't need a level playing field. I want to show other adaptive athletes that we can compete on the same stage as everyone else. I don't need to win the race, right? I want to show that the herniated discs are not what hold me back. They are the catalyst for why I'm in the best shape of my life at 45 years old. Because I can choose to sit there and be in pain all the time, not doing anything, or I can strengthen my core, or I can go to work and I can, you know, I can get after it and I can do things that are actually physically beneficial for me. The work is hard, right? Training is hard. Running 30 miles is hard, but the results make my life easier. The results make my life better. And when I realized that, that's how I attack all of it. And that's why I am active in sobriety and I have a program of recovery and I am open about my alcoholism because I want to help other alcoholics. And that's how I recover. And I continue to get, you know, better. Sleep apnea is one of the worst, is probably the worst thing that's happened to me because it was the one that made me feel the most vulnerable and the one that made me feel the weakest and like not a man. Like if you know how hard it is to be like 25 years old, 26 years old and taking a girl home and she sees that shit. So I wouldn't share rooms with people when I traveled, not even guys. It was something that made me feel so weak and vulnerable and I didn't like that. And so and also not for nothing, you're being tired a lot, you know, and like it just sucks to be young and have this desire to live your life and to always feel like you're too tired for it. And so part of that, again, was making the decision that, you know what, sometimes I'm just going to be tired, but I am not going to allow it to stop me from living my life anymore.
Oh,
I'm not the only
wow.
person who's tired. I'm not the only person who has a bad night's sleep sometimes or a headache or now if you don't know sleep apnea, I mean it sucks. It feels like you're getting choked out all night. And if you have a bad night's sleep with that, like You're literally not getting oxygen to your brain. It's not just like, oh, you didn't sleep enough. Like I would have rather skipped a night's sleep than have a bad night's sleep like that. So it's debilitating, but at the same time, sometimes you got to play hurt, right? You show up. And so getting rid of the victim mindset. Here's the thing. If you got mugged today at gunpoint, right? You were a victim. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Like you were victimized. How long you choose to stay that way though is up to you. It sucks that I was born with my jaw being the way that it is and that I have sleep apnea. So maybe, just maybe, I was a victim of bad luck. But only I can decide to stay that way.
Wow, yeah, it's just all about choice at the end of the day. What I wanted to ask you, you obviously stopped alcohol, you're recovering. What other lifestyle changes you make in terms of nutrition, in terms of exercise? Like what type of, especially for your hernia, for recovery, to be able to go into these ultra marathons and mountain climbing? What did you do differently?
Everything starts with incremental steps, incremental progress for incremental results. The very first thing, the most dramatic thing that I did was set my alarm for 5 a.m. to wake up before work to exercise. That was the single most life-changing thing I've ever done. And it seems so foreign because we all think we don't have time. We all think we need 10 hours of sleep or we don't want to get up. But when you add something important and meaningful to your life, you find time. You're intentional with your time. So that was the first thing that I did was I just started training. And I was only training for short races. I was only doing 15 miles a week or something like that. Um, but once you start getting consistent, your body adapts and you add volume, you add time to it. I wanted to feel better, so I started eating better nutrition. I had gone to Cuba for a couple days, and when I came back, I ate like a big greasy pizza and I felt sick for days because I had been eating literally backyard to table, like 100% organic, simple food for days. And then all of a sudden I realized that, wow, organic isn't a fad. It's not a term. It's a real thing. And so I'm not 100%, but when I have the opportunity to eat organic versus not, I choose organic. So I just started making slightly healthier eating choices, trading water instead of something else. Like it all began to add up. And then because I am 45 and I want to compete more, I need to recover faster. So I do more stretching, I do more meditation. All of these things I started cutting out sugar in other things that I have too, not just sugar like candy, but looking at the ingredients of the things that I'm eating. And this is all evolved over time. It wasn't like I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to start living this healthy lifestyle. It's still an evolution. I think that's where a lot of people get hung up is they say, I'm going to live healthy and I need to do this. And they throw everything away and they try doing this hardcore life and then they have their first bad day at work. And because what they're doing is such a drastic change, they break down immediately and they never get back on track.
Mm.
Start small and just do one thing, one thing, one thing. I made a video, I haven't posted it yet. I'm going to redo it, but I basically said, and it was like a 10-second video, and it was a picture of me doing squats, a video of me doing squats, just body weight squats, okay? And I said, don't tell me you don't have time, because in the time it took you to watch this video, you could have done 10 squats.
Sure.
When you're
Yeah.
not doing anything, 10 squats 5 times a day will literally change your life. But it's not hard to do. What do you really need to sacrifice, right? It's just intention for 30 seconds of your life that you need to do this thing. And then you find that with the simple actions, the next action just gets easier and easier. It's just the first domino that seems so impossible.
Wow. Yeah. It's these incremental changes are really important, as you said. But 5 a.m. is for some, it's quite tough. Like, I mean, as people start maybe changing their diet first. I mean, it's you just like seems to be like waking up 5 a.m. That seems like quite. I mean, for me, it seems a bit more drastic. What made you just start with the waking up at 5 a.m. just from the time point of view?
To make time to exercise because I won't do it after work. I had to go home after work to let my dogs out, to let my dog out, and the me working out at 7 p.m. after that was very not going to happen. So the most likelihood of when am I going to do it? Plus, if it's important, you do it first. You do the things that you like least first. get it done, get it out of the way. There's no excuse at 5 a.m. And I'm not, and to be honest, I get up at 4 and 4:30 most of the time now. I sleep maybe depending on the night, but 6 to 7 hours a night. It's not necessarily about getting up early. Like there's no value in just getting up early for the purpose of doing it. And I don't know what time you go to bed, so it's a pretty irrelevant stat, right? Like when you see people out there like, oh, I'm up at 3 a.m. And I'm like, well, what time do you go to bed? They're like, oh, I'm in bed by 8. And I'm like, what the fuck does that matter? Like, it's no different than me. Like, like where if you're sleeping 9, 10 hours a day, I guarantee you can tell yourself all day how much you need it, but you're wrong.
Yeah, I think 9 to 10 hours is a little bit too much, and actually can be from a health hazard actually sleeping that long. But I agree with you. 7 to 8, 6 to 7 hours is pretty average. 6 to 8 hours is pretty good to get anyway.
Believe it or not, my most consistent and best is when I sleep for like 6, and I mean 6. Um, not five, like not 6:10, not 5:55, but if I get like 6 solid hours, and that's important though, the quality of the rest, because for me, I'm only going to get so much quality sleep anyway. Staying in bed longer is not going to help. Um, but on the weekends, I'll sleep till about 7:30. Not the weekends, I'm sorry, Sunday. On Saturdays, I'm up at 4 in the morning because I go for a stupid long run and it's 1,000 degrees in Florida. But so so it started with adding the exercise, and that's why I needed to do it at a time I was going to be consistent, and that's why for me it was setting the alarm at 5 instead of 6:30.
Sure. So you've got a purpose. You said so. Obviously, the purpose is making priority for what's is you change your priority, which is amazing. So it's like 5 o'clock or whatever the case is, and no big deal anymore because you've got that purpose,
Oh, it
and
still
it's
sucks.
amazing. Sorry.
It still sucks. I don't like waking up early. I don't, but people sometimes think I'm like one of those guys. I don't. I need an alarm. I struggle with the snooze button, but it's more, my goals are more important than my dreams, and that's when I do it. So it is about priority, but it's not easy. Like it's not easy. It does not get easier for me.
Sure. So what you're talking about dreams. What is your dream? What is your ultimate goal? Like how many mountains to climb, to scale? What is your goal?
The things that my races are, I set goals based on races, but that's not my purpose. This is just a way that it manifests for me. My purpose is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. And the way that I do that is I pick fights with my fears. I pick fights with my limitations. I set big goals. I go chase big things, and I don't let my circumstances hold me back in life. And then the way that I do that is by sharing that through my books, through my speaking engagements, through podcasts, through posting on social media and coaching individuals. So that's how I fulfill my purpose. Racing and stuff like that, like I do have big goals. I'm chasing that mountain race in September. At some point, I want to run the Spartathlon, which is about a 250-kilometer race from Athens to Sparta.
Wow.
There's just cool things I want to do. Um, and as I get more and more into the endurance racing, it seems like there's more and more I want to do. But that again is not the end goal. That is just a vehicle of what helps me get there. It's
Purpose.
how it keeps me focused on on a healthy lifestyle, because again, I'm training for a really big goal, a really hard race that 70% of the people fail, which means I need to be very intentional with my time. And the things that you get from that include planning, commitment, consistency, discipline, right? Over problem solving, because it takes time. You have to find these things. And those are all skills and attributes that help me perform better in every single other aspect of my life. So
Yeah.
it's not, I don't train for races. I train for life. Races are just a celebration of my progress.
Just a fuel to get to where you're going.
Something to focus on. Hopefully, God willing, I conquer that mountain race this year, and then I don't have to do it anymore, and I can start doing something else. But right now, that's the goal. Hopefully in a year or two, I'll be focusing on a shorter distance, and maybe I don't have to run 40 miles a week. But
And
right
when
now,
you,
that's what I do.
it's crazy, how do you prepare for those races?
Again, starts with incremental progress because you got to start on day one. All these medals behind me started with the one race. I didn't sign up for 104 Spartan races. I signed up for one. But for me now, the race that I'm almost hitting my peak training for this race, and so I'll be doing almost just under 40 miles a week in running. And then I'm doing about two 45-minute sessions a week of climbing, whether it be on a like a Stairmaster, a climbing machine, a treadmill that goes up to like a 30 or 40%, incline. And I get on there with sandbags. And I do 2 days a week of strength training, which usually involves a lot of sandbag squats, lunges, step ups, like anything like that, pull ups, things that are obstacle specific. Um, I do probably 3 to 4 different sessions of mobility work throughout the week that I add in, and then I do about a 30-minute stretch every week. I mean, I'm sorry, every night before bed. And on this Saturday in particular, I'm doing a very special workout that I call the Seminole Sufferfest because I live in a town called Seminole, and it's going to be 5 miles of comfortable running, followed by 45 minutes of taking a sandbag up and down a highway overpass, just up and down, up and down, up and down. It's about a 35% incline, and just that's all I got. I live in Florida, so there's no mountains or hills here. And I'm going to do that for about 45 minutes. And I'm going to go over to the park. And then there's a workout I'm going to do that involves a bunch of weighted step ups, rope climbs. Again, I'm trying to burn out my legs because I've completed the first lap of this race before. So I'm training for lap 2. So I want my long runs to be on tired legs. I burn out my legs all week. So my longest run is a mental sufferfest. I make it so that my body, like when I run 18 miles in 2 weeks, I would have done 500 squats that week, and I would have already run 25 miles.
Oh,
And I want to be tired when I go into that run because I'm not trying to have a good 18-mile run. I'm trying to run a 30-mile mountain race. And I
oh,
need to be prepared to do it on tired legs because, when you get to mile 20, you're not going to be fresh. You're going to be begging for death, looking for a way off the mountain on legs that don't think they can climb anymore. So I'm forcing my brain. I will make it if my mind doesn't quit this year. I'm physically better trained than I was last year. I'm physically better trained than I was in 2021. I need to make sure that my mind is ready for when I want to quit, that I can keep going. And so I intentionally, right now in this phase, which might seem crazy to a lot of people, I am intentionally putting myself into suffering situations so I can prep my brain for it. Because after all that climbing and the rope climbing is another 5-mile run.
oh.
And I'm going to be on Jello after that, right? It'll be 14, 15-minute miles. It'll be at 9 o'clock in the morning at that point. It'll probably be 103 degrees. It will be miserable. And that's the point. Because when I'm
Does it
20
get
miles in and I want to quit, I'll be ready.
so remind me of David
Or
Goggins'
at least
book. I've
more
read
ready.
that's crazy. Like, have you read David, Goggins' book? I'm not sure what it's called. A couple of them, I think, I've read.
Can't
Um,
Hurt Me and then Never Finished. They're both the same book, pretty much, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. But he runs through a lot of pain and a lot of like broken ankles and that. Is that something similar that you do as well, or
I'm
to
not
get
nearly
those?
as extreme as him. Like some people don't like Goggins, and I think they don't listen to him when they say that because he's not advocating that somebody goes out and runs injured. He's telling you what it does for his mindset and what he experienced. And there is some truth to that, for sure, right? Well, there's a lot of truth to it. He's 100% right. I'm not as extreme as him. I go through suffering, but I go through controlled suffering. I've run a marathon with a broken foot before, but it wasn't because I was trying to be like all tough. It's because I didn't know if I would ever get another chance to run that marathon. It was the 2019 New York Marathon. I broke my foot. Well, I fractured part of it like 6, 7 weeks before. I was completely untrained, and people were like, "Defer your entry, defer your entry." And I said, "How do you know there's going to be a next year?" And they all joked, right? Well, guess what? There was no next year. So I ran a 6-hour marathon with a busted foot. It was awful. I wasn't trained. My blood sugars hated me, but who cares? I ran the New York City Marathon and the only chance I could get. Um, I completed a Spartan race with a broken rib once. I fractured it in mile 3 of an 8-mile race. And I kept going, but here's the part of the story that I didn't tell you is that was the first time that I ever raced with the words "fuck cancer" written across my chest. there was nothing that would have made me quit that race because it wasn't for me. But now I'm going to tell you another story where I strained my hamstring in an ultra in Dallas last year. And it was mile 12 of a 30-mile race. And I hoofed my way to the aid station and hitchhiked out of there. I didn't have the same why, so it would have been stupid for me to keep going. Yeah, could I train my mind? But what for what? Like, what was going to be the point of that? Like, it wasn't just to suffer, So some things are a little more tactical, but I definitely subscribe to what he talks about because, again, if you don't listen to his words, you're going to think he's all about the physical activity. But if you listen to his words, I mean, he talks about overcoming his learning disability just as much as he does about breaking the pull-up record. And it's all about mindset. So on that area, I'm very lockstep with him. But I don't think you need to be hard all the time. I'm not hard all the time. I'm not savage all the time. I'm not preparing my mindset for that. I am prioritizing different things in my life. And I don't believe I'm not all in on one thing. And so that's where there's going to be a big difference between someone like me and someone like him. And that's why he is the baddest man on the planet. And I'm me.
No, look, you're pretty bad. I mean, like, it's unbelievable all your medals behind you, what you've achieved, and how you overcome. I don't think David Goggins overcame 4 bouts of cancer and car accidents either.
He,
So,
he's been through a lot of shit, though. And I know you'd be able to handle it. So,
but everyone's different. It's not about being the baddest man. It's being about uniquely you, which is unbelievable. And that brings me to, just to wrap things up. It's so inspiring hearing your story. I'm sure there's some kind of nugget, motivational quote from you that you can give to the viewers.
man, I'm just always going to share this one right now, which is to live inspired. And what I mean by that is inspiration is everywhere. You just have to go looking for it. If you want to be inspired, if you want to live inspired, inspire yourself. Do something new. Do something hard. Do something you think you can't do and redefine the world that you live in.
Love it, love it, love it. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Just a reminder, just please subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's going to be amazing other guests coming up and giveaways. Thank you so much, Nick, for taking your time and super impressive how you've overcome the victimhood and becoming a real thriver and winner in life. So well done to you, just from strength to strength. Good luck with your climb later in the year. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.